Dive into the chaos of ineffective classroom reading techniques and learn to create a more dynamic learning environment. I'm Dr. Emily Sherwood. If you're interested in literacy and education from a global perspective, please like and subscribe. So Marcy came, had her head on the desk. She was totally upset. She said, "The teacher made me to read." Now, Marcy was in the 7th grade. She was both an English learner and a special education student, and her reading was extremely low. She had tested at a kindergarten level. And she said, "I'm not supposed to have to read out loud." She claimed that it was in her IEP, her individualized education plan, that she wasn't supposed to read. It wasn't, but evidently in her last school, the teacher had told her teacher not to make her read out loud. And this story just kind of illustrates the problems with what you might call whole group reading. Now, there are different names for this. There's popcorn reading, which is where someone reads for a little while, and then they say popcorn and the person's name. Or they might just say the person's name, and so someone else then reads in the class. There's popsicle reading, which is where the teacher has popsicles, and the teacher pulls one out and has a next student's name in it, and that student has to read. Round robin reading is another name that's a little bit older for this, but the whole idea is that students take turn reading in the class. And this is really common. It's a very traditional way of reading, and it's especially done in the content areas. For example, in science and social studies, it's done a lot. Or in English, if everyone's reading the same book, it's done. And this has been found to be a bad idea for many reasons. The first is that it embarrasses students who can't read well, and students who can read well will often, sometimes well-meaning, sometimes not, will often interrupt these students. So you'll hear a student reading and struggling over a word, and instead of the student finishing the word, someone else finishes for that student. And no matter how much you tell the student who's the good reader to stop, that student just continues, because it's natural for students to want to correct and to want to show that they can read better. So it is frustrating for students, and it does discourage their reading. Now, there are lots of other reasons. That student who's a good reader is totally bored. That student's daydreaming. The student may have already read the whole text silently, and so that student's just daydreaming the whole time. That student's not getting anything out of this activity. That student's just losing time. Then you've got the struggling student here who may just not be reading at all. It's very common to call on a student and the student not have any idea where the class is. Oftentimes the student's just, la la land, just not really there, especially if the student has low reading skills. That student isn't getting anything out of it. So there's just not very good focus on this. This is mostly done to help the teacher and to help the class get through content. There are lots of better ways. So the best way for students to be reading is either silent reading, where the students are reading on their own, or pair reading, where the students are reading with a pair. Pair reading is effective, for example, when there's a very struggling student and someone that student trusts and likes to help that student. That can be helpful. Or if the students can help each other if they're in a similar level. Silent reading is where the student's reading silently. Now, again, if the text is not on the student's level, that's not going to really help the student very much. And it's best if the student has an own level text. And I've talked a little bit about reading levels in other videos. Unfortunately, this is something that's not commonly done in schools. Round robin or popcorn reading is still a really common practice. And it's not very effective at all for multiple reasons. So what is your experience with reading as a class? Popcorn reading, popsicle reading, round robin reading. I want to know. So please comment below and say if you found this effective, if you have any stories, interesting stories about it. I would love to hear it. If you're interested, again, in reading and education policy, please like and subscribe. Thanks, and have a wonderful day, and keep learning.